Uh, I'm good, thanks.
Okay,
Initially, I just want to thank you for inviting me to be on your show, this All India Runners Motivation. For me,
thank
it's a
you.
great privilege and a pleasure.
Okay,
The reason
that's
I say
nice.
this, the reason I say this is because several of my predecessors, many of my contemporaries like Kurbhat Singh Randhawa, Alex Silveira, Edward Sequeira, Ramesh Taude, Owen Thomas, and some of them after my time, like Uday Prabhu, uh, Janashekaran, Hari Chand, Gopal Saini, Charles Borromeo, and I have to say that I'm an exalted company to be on this show as they had been earlier.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come in. Before we start the interview, I would just like to know from you is that
Yeah.
how did this nickname, Gentleman Sprinter, come about? Is there a story behind it?
Actually, it goes way back in the 60s. Mr. Chikkapapaya, the then the secretary of the Karnataka Athletic Association. He was also one of the senior vice president of the All India Athletic Federation. And during the CPM meet, he used to host the CPM meet. It was known as the C. Prasanna Kumar Memorial Meet. So we used to host that, and on the program, the cover page, they used to have the picture of Jesse Owens. Generally,
Okay.
it was Jesse Owens on the cover page, but he changed it and he put my photograph there on the cover page of the program. And under that, he gave me the title Gentleman Sprint King.
Okay.
So that's how I
Fine.
got the name. that, that
Okay.
happened
Did you
sometime in the mid 60s. Yeah.
and the name has stuck with you for all this time, even now when
The
we
name, the
Google
name
your
is still,
name, it's still there.
the gentleman is still there, but not Sprint King because I'm no longer the Sprint King. So just
You will
Gentleman
always
Sprint.
be the sprinting. But did you ask him why the name Gentleman or why the nickname Gentleman? Any reasons why?
No, I really don't know. I
Okay,
can't. I can't figure that out.
okay. So, I heard that you're from the Kolar
Yeah,
actually,
gold,
and
yeah,
Kolar is
Goldfield.
also known for its gold mines, or Kolar
Yeah,
Goldfields, KGF.
yeah. Because
There's
I
a
just want
big,
to clarify one thing. Kola
yeah,
is a town. It's separate. It's a separate town. That's the head. This the district headquarters. Kola town. Kola
okay,
Goldfields is a much bigger city. It's actually a city, but people don't realize it is a city because during my time when I was studying there, the population was about 160,000.
okay,
Sorry about that.
no problems.
Yeah.
So it was 160,000 population was there.
160,000. Yeah, yeah. When I was growing up in like a teenager then.
Okay. So, there's a famous serial, the Kolar's name has come back called KGF, which is running. There's a movie also, I think, by that name, which has come up now.
That's right.
So,
Some Hindi
uh,
movie.
yes, absolutely. So, I just wanted to check up with you. You're from Kolar, and tell us a bit about those times, your childhood in Kolar. How was it? What were the games you were playing? Just tell us a bit about your childhood days.
Yeah, actually, between the age of 5 and 10, uh, we had no idea what games were actually. So what we played was mainly marbles, tops, flying kites, and a game called rounders. I don't know if you heard of this game called rounders. It's similar to baseball,
Okay.
played with the tennis board, but you don't pitch it. You just lob it to the batsman,
Okay.
and you have the bases there as well. And it's played either with a bat or a club. So those
Okay.
are the games that we generally played as youngsters between the age of 5 and 10. Because in my school, it is known as the KJF Boys High School, and they followed the imperial system.
Okay.
That is, we had all the events were in yards, 100, like sub juniors. I got to compete for the first time in 1951. I was just over 10 years old, just
Okay.
under 11, in fact. And I got to compete in the sub-junior division. It's only after they didn't have any events for children below the age of 10. It started with above 10 and started with the sub-junior division. They had just three events: the 100 yards, 150 yards, and the long jump. And
Okay.
I can recall that while winning the long jump that year, 1951, in the sub-junior division, I had a leap of 14 feet 8 inches.
Wow.
And that was more than the winning distance in the junior division,
Okay.
which was only 14, by a person called Peter Daniels. He won with 14 feet 2 inches.
Okay.
So actually,
That,
after the age of 10, we moved to more competitive sports like hockey, cricket, and a little bit of athletics. I never trained for athletics in school, never ever trained. I didn't know what training was actually. Because I played so much of cricket and hockey, it kept me in good stead, and I was able to compete. And I used to win every year the sprint events, plus some of the jumps like long jump and triple jump as well. And we had some of the finest athletes from KGF.
okay.
I had mentioned earlier, I don't know whether I should mention it again. We had a person by the name of Derek Boozy. His father was a national triple jump champion around 38, 39, 40. Was selected for the 40 Olympic Games which was to be held in Tokyo that year, 1940. But because of World War II, the games were cancelled, and he missed out on an opportunity of participating in the Olympic Games.
Okay.
His son Derek, he was my contemporary, and then he joined the Central Railway at Pune, and he had signed a bond for 5 years, and he won the national same triple jump, same event as his father, the triple jump in the 1961 Jalandhar Nationals. And in the meantime, his family had migrated to UK, and on compassionate grounds, the railways released him. He migrated to UK. He joined the RAF, the Royal Air Force, and initially he was ranked number 4 in Great Britain. There was another guy by the name of Mike Ralph, Anglo-Indian from Calcutta. He was number 1 in the triple jump in England.
Okay.
And later on, Derek became number 1, and he went on to represent Great Britain at the 1968 Mexico Olympic Games.
Okay. So what was it about Kolar, which produced not only, I mean, you had a lot of Olympians actually for
Yeah,
such
and
a
football.
small place.
Yeah.
If you make a count more than 10 plus, is there something, was something happening differently, as compared to other places in India, whereas one small place was, making so many Olympians?
I really can't understand because we didn't have the training facilities there. Even football, we didn't have proper facilities. When most of the Olympians came in football, and
Okay.
just a few athletes.
Okay.
But as I said, we had no training facilities. It was just an ordinary ground called the Gymkhana ground where they had all the competitions, the KGF mining sports, annual sports, even the KGF school, like where I studied. Uh, we had just the same ground to
Okay.
use for participating in school meet.
So you started off. I mean, you said you used to play cricket and hockey, and you were very good in that in both these games. You started
Yeah.
off at that time. I mean, I think you took more to cricket. Any inspirations at that time? Now you were, because you're a fast bowler also.
Yeah.
Who you try to emulate?
Well, I tried to emulate the great Australian fast bowler. I don't know if you heard of him, Ray Lindwall.
Yes.
He along with Keith Miller, the great fast bowling all-rounder, and Bill Johnston, the left arm the third seamer, and Harold Larwood and Bill Vose terrorized the Australian batsmen during the early days of Bradman's career
Okay.
with the infamous Bodyline series.
Yes.
Then Australia retaliated under Bradman with people like Lindwall, Miller, and Johnston in the
Okay.
40s and the early 50s.
Okay.
So
So
I sort of modeled my bowling action on Lindwall's. style.
Okay. So I mean, at that time it was only print media and radio. Did you also, like many of the youngsters at that time, stay awake or got up early in the morning to listen to cricket commentary?
Well, I used to do that. I used to wake up because those days there was no daylight saving in the 50s. In fact, I started watching cricket from the age of 11. I remember South Africa toured Australia in 51, 52. And at that time, Lindsay Hassett was the captain of the Australian. He took over from Sir Donald Bradman.
Okay.
And they had a great batting lineup. But South Africa, I mean, those days, South Africa never played against countries like India, Pakistan, and the West Indies. So there were only actually 5 test playing nations at that time. Pakistan got test status in 1952, and New Zealand got test status in 1955, and both toured India. Pakistan toured India in 52, and New Zealand toured India in 55.
Okay. Wonderful. So before I ask you the next question, there are a few of your friends or people who knows you are there. We have got Jnanashekaran Ramaswamy sir, who's saying hello to you all the way from Chennai. He is tuned into the interview. So we have got also Simon D'Souza sir from Railways, who's also friends with Mr. Edward Siqueira and Alex Silveira. We have got Prabhakar Rao sir all the way from Hyderabad, who says he's a friend. He knows you 40 years back. He's also from Nagabhushan's place, but he's staying in Hyderabad now. So they're all happy to see you on screen. So they all conveyed their regards to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and I wish them all the best of luck as well.
Okay. So, you in school, you are doing extremely well in cricket, and you were a fast bowler, taking at least 3 or 4 wickets in almost every league game. Just wanted to check, what was the reason why you shifted to athletics? Because cricket was also good, but any reasons why you shifted to athletics?
Well, I not only played cricket in school, but I played cricket for Indian Telephone Industries in the senior division of the state league. And that's where I used to get usually 3 to 4 wickets per game, sometimes even 5. But there was a person by the name of Mr. Benjamin Frank. He was a coach of the cricket team. And he was the first Indian, actually, to have scored a century against the powerful 1948 West Indies team, which had the famous 3 W's in their team, Worrell, Weeks, and Walcott. And he played for Bengal in the Ranji Trophy. And he didn't get to play for India. And he advised me, he says, if you don't have a godfather, you're not going to make it big in cricket, he says. So my advice, move to an individual one. And that's when I moved to athletics. And I started training. I remember the date very well, 31st July, 1959. I started training for athletics under Krishna.
Okay.
So Krishna ran a club called Rangers Athletic Club. We had a very small ground. It was called the Anasami High School. It was just a 200-meter track. It had only 1 lane, and that 1 lane, they made this 1 lane, and later on with constant use, it became a permanent mark. So that's all we had for training. So right through my career, I trained on this 1 lane, 200-meter track. In fact, I worked with IT, Indian Telephone Industries at that time, and my working hours were from 6:15 to 2:45. I had to stand and work 8 hours a day, and I got back at 3:30, had a quick shower, got to the ground, and we couldn't start training because we had to wait for the school bell to finish the school day.
Okay.
So we had a vegetable patch at the side of the ground. So that's where we warmed up. As soon as the bell rang, we got onto the field and started our workout.
Okay. So you started working at a very young age. What age did you join ITI?
I was 19 when I started working.
Okay, that's nice. So you never did any trainings for athletics in school days, and you were under Coach Krishna. How did you find him? How did you get to know him?
Actually, I was introduced to him by another colleague of mine who worked in IT. He was a high jumper by name Peter Dagier. So he said, "Come, I'll introduce you to Krishna, and you can start training at the Rangers Club." And that's when it all happened. And Krishna followed I don't know if you heard of the Swedish term called the Fartlek system of training.
Yes.
It's called interval training
Yeah.
in English. So we did that interval training. That means repetition work, have a break, 5-minute break, and then get on to the next repetition. And that's how it worked. That's the interval training.
Okay. Wonderful.
And
We'll just come to the training part a bit. I just wanted to let you know we have Vimal and Barbara Powell, Vimal Satyal and Barbara from all the way from
oh
Australia,
yeah,
Brisbane.
yeah. She's
They are
she's
tuned.
actually her dad and I are first cousins.
Okay, they
Barbara's
are
dad.
tuned in. They are tuned in.
Okay, that's good.
They're listening to you, and also Teresa Reddy is also listening to you.
Okay, trees are ready. Yeah,
Yeah,
she
okay.
lived opposite our place earlier.
Okay. So it's nice, you got audience from all over India and few from across the continent also. So
Yeah,
it's a
that's
good
good.
audience.
Thanks to you.
So you never had any trainings with athlete as an athlete, but you went under you were introduced to Coach Krishna. Were there many corrections required for you, because you are not trained, you are trained as a fast bowler. I mean, you like running, of course, but were there any major corrections required when you were training under Coach Krishna on your action or
Well,
stride or anything like that?
no corrections were made to my running style. That remained natural from the very beginning. No change was required, in fact.
Okay.
And
Wonder.
I was a reasonably good runner on the curve. And
Okay.
the main reason for that is because we trained on this smaller ground, the 200-meter track, which had a sharper curve. So I used to negotiate the bend very well.
Okay. Wonderful. So, how was the training under him? What were the things which you learned new apart from interval or fartlek training? Apart from that, what are the other things he taught you?
Like we did a lot of off-season, during the off-season, we did a lot of road running, which actually affected my knees finally. used
Okay.
to, used to do a bit of jogging and then striding, and then we used to do a sprint about 100, 150 meters. So that took its toll on my knees. And actually, I don't have pain in the knees, but my leg has become curved now, bow-shaped, the right leg.
Okay.
So that's my only problem. So I tend to have a limp when I walk. So I can't run anymore.
Okay. Okay.
And this
Uh,
happened sometime in 2002. I actually what happened was I had my car and the bike parked in the garage. I was taking the bike out. I was sitting on the bike and moving down, and then this dog ran across, and I fell off the bike, and I hurt this knee. And that's when, after not immediately, but maybe after about 5 or 6 years, started to get bow shaped.
okay. Very good. I mean, so I mean,
Just
that's when
one
the
thing I
fall
want to
took
tell
place.
you,
Yeah.
just one thing about my cricket.
Okay.
Uh, See, I was one of the very few fast bowlers at the time who who bowled a lethal bouncer. In fact, in KGF we had two clubs: the
Okay.
Colonial Sports Club, which had all the Anglo Indians playing for them, and we had the Modern Cricket Club, mostly Tamilians and some Muslims. There was
Okay.
a guy called Henry John. His father used to be a doctor in the mining hospital there, and I bowled a bouncer to him. He used to play actually for Tamil Nadu universities.
Okay.
And I bowled a bouncer and I got a nasty
Okay.
blow on the jaw.
Okay.
And then he went to Velo and realized that he had a fractured jaw. He had to get it set over there at Velo.
Okay.
So after that, I was a little reluctant to bowl bouncers.
Okay.
So that was part of my career, bowling a bouncer. Very
Okay.
few people bowled bouncers at that time in India.
Okay.
And
Uh,
Ramakant Desai was the first man to bowl a bouncer, and he terrorized uh, some of the West Indian batsmen, which had people like Gary Sobers and Rohan Khanna and all. And he was a tiny bloke. He's only 5 feet 4 inches in height.
okay. And he was bowling bounces.
He was bowling bouncers and he really played hell into them.
Okay, that's an amazing thing. That maybe the batsmen are also scared of you with your speed, which you're bowling, and of course with the bouncer. I'm sure there are a few batsmen who were scared of you also because there was no helmet at that time, right?
No
You
helmets at
never.
all. No,
Yeah.
no, proper padding at all, no, except for pads and the abdominal guard. There was nothing else. No arm guard and no chest guard, nothing like that. No helmet.
Okay. So you were training under Coach Krishna, and
Yeah.
you were very good at the bends, which is nice. And you started your training. How long did you train before your first race actually?
Well, as I said, I started on the 31st July 1959. And in the month of October, we had a competition, CPM Club versus ITA. And the CPM Club had a person by the name of Ravi Mani. And he was the current state champion.
Okay.
And I beat him. I beat him in both the 100 and 200. But even
Oh,
before
okay.
that, as I joined ITA, this was in the month of May I joined ITA, and I hadn't started training yet for athletics. And there was a
Okay.
meet in Makara, in Coog. It was an
Okay.
invitation meet. And I remember that very well. I slipped in the 100 and I lost track to qualifying for the final. But in the 200 meters, uh, what happened was it was the last event. It was the third heat, and only two to qualify from each heat for the final. The last heat before the lunch break, and I had Ravi Mani, he was a current state champion, and we had Chinnappa, he was the 400 meters champion, and number two in the 200. So Ravi Mani went before the gun. I stopped, but there was no callback. So I continued
Okay.
to run, and I finished the race, and I finished third. So I
Okay.
didn't qualify. But the person who was organizing the meet, Mr. Ayappa, his name was, Ayana, and he saw what happened. And at the lunch break, he made an announcement. He says the third heat that was run before the lunch break will be rerun after the lunch break. Because this is what happened. He says the one of the athletes went before the gun, and it was not fair because I stopped, and then I continued to run. So when they had the rerun after the lunch break, uh, I won the heat, and Ravi Manu was out. He finished third.
Okay. Okay.
And
Fine.
in the final, I was placed second. I was beaten by a person called Satyanarayan, B.V. Satyanarayan. He
Yeah.
was Olympian also, but in the long jump. But he was a brilliant sprinter, and at that time he was probably the best in the South India at that time in the sprints, 100 and 200. So he won both 100 and 200, and I finished second to him.
Okay.
In
Okay.
fact, Satyanarayan participated in two Olympic games, 1960 in Rome and 64 in Tokyo.
So that was the first actual event which you participated
Yeah,
after you started training, and
and
just 2 months of training.
a month later in November, uh, Coimbatore used to host what is called the Coimbatore Olympic Games. Well, I just want to let you know, my mom and dad hail from Coimbatore,
Okay.
and my dad worked in the cordite factory at Urban Kadu. That's
Oh,
in the
okay.
Nilgiris. Yeah, before moving to the mines.
Okay.
And we had this Coimbatore Olympics, and we had a person by the name of Vincent Martin. He was from
Okay.
Tiruchirappalli, and he used to represent Madras in the nationals. He was a national champion that year, 1959. And in the final, I was leading all the way, but because of his experience, he lunged at the tape and just beat me in a photo finish.
Okay.
And with that, he didn't come for the 200 meters. He pulled out to the 200. So he
Okay.
was a reigning nine. I gave him a bit of a fright actually.
Okay. That's wonderful. So the after that meet, which you first took part, where you beat Mr. Money, you also went to the second meet where you came second.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that era of your that time actually, was a time where we had, I mean, world class sprinters. Can you just tell us a bit about that era? Who were the sprinters whom you were, from India? We had a good batch of good quality sprinters, and all of them were great sprinters, including yourself.
Yeah,
Just tell us a
at
bit
any
about their
time,
era.
at any time they could run a 10.5 or 10.6 that time, you know. So we had Rajasekharan. He was national champion in 1962 at Jabalpur. And we had, I don't know if you heard of Mohammed Qasim. He was the Andhra police, and Nagabhushan was also Andhra police. These were other two sprinters from Andhra who were running at those times of 10.5, 10.6. Then we had Ramesh Taude. He's a guy who beat me in the national games here in Bangalore in 1966. And we had ASV Prasad, who was a former regional director here in Bangalore, the SAI, Sports Authority of India. So I remember the final way back in 64, I think. 64, yeah. And the winning time was 10.5, and the person who finished 6th ran 10.8.
Okay. Amazing. So I think all of them were under 11 seconds at that time.
All under 11, yeah. I think this first time it ever happened in a national meet when all 6 runners clocked under 11.
Okay. Prabhakar Rao sir has made a comment asking you to just tell us a bit about Nagabhushan sir. How was it? How was he as a runner?
Nagabhushan was a brilliant 200-meter runner. He was good in 100 as well, but a brilliant 200-meter runner. And he was medalist before I was. He won 2 silver medals, first in Jalandhar in 1961 and again in Jabalpur in 62. In fact, at Jabalpur, I finished 5th in the 200 meters.
Okay.
But as I said, see, in 1962, both of us qualified for the Asian Games, along with 17 other athletes. But the sanction from the government, at that time, there was no sports ministry. Sports was coming under education. And so the sanction from the government was for 17 athletes. I'm talking about only athletics. Hockey and all had their own figure. I think hockey was 18 and other sports, whatever it was, I'm not sure. But athletics, the sanction from the government side was 17. So they asked the federation to drop 2. So I don't know on what basis they dropped both Nagabhushan and myself. I think that affected his career. That almost ended his career. He took part for maybe another year, and with that he quit. Never even competed in the police meet after that. But I think I was a lot stronger mentally, physically, and I just continued. I just learned to accept these things as a sportsman. You learn to accept all these things in life, success, failure, whatever. And so I missed out. In fact, I missed out the Commonwealth Games as well a few months later in November 62. And the reason for that was because of the Indo-China War in 62.
Okay.
And normally they would send a token team for these games. That means mostly athletes only. So I was selected, and this Mr. Chikkapapaya, he was selected as the manager of the team. There were 2 sprinters, a person called Nicholas Ferrer from Bombay and myself. So it was a 10-member team that was selected for the Commonwealth Games to be held in Perth in 1962.
Okay.
But they just hinted withdrew its participation from the games.
Okay. Well, Vimal is saying that there was a sprinter named Kennedy at Tata's meet.
Edwin Kennedy, yeah, he was a good sprinter, but I was still around when he started his career. He started his career in 68. In fact, 68 was my last appearance in a national meet individually. I continued to run for the steel plant sports board in the sprint relay right up to 73.
Okay.
And Adrian Kennedy started as a sprinter. He made his debut when I was participating for the last time. He was making his debut there in Madras in 1968. Okay. And he was around. In fact, he represented India in the Asian track and field meet at Manila in 1973, and India got a bronze medal in that. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
He was part of that relay team.
Now, when I hear your story of the sanction not happening, and I mean, it makes me wonder, because those were your peak times. You were at your peak, and you would have definitely bought a medal, at least
possibly
even
a
gold
medal in the individual event. Medal in the individual event, maybe in a medal in the relay as well. But that's not all. 1966, I qualified again, and that time I was in my really in my peak. In fact, I had just returned from at that time it was known as the British Empire and Commonwealth Games, which was held in Kingston, and I was the captain of the Indian team. I was also the flag bearer of the Indian contingent at these Commonwealth Games.
Okay.
So on my return, we had the selection for the 66 Asian Games. And that year in the national at Ajmer, I ran a 21.2, which made me number one in Asia in the 200 meters. And I was number 2 in the 100.
Wow.
But again, the sanction was only for 17 athletes, and 29 of us qualified, 3 marathon runners, the entire sprint crews. They were all dropped. And so I missed out on 2 Asian Games.
That's really sad. I mean, you would have actually gotten more medals into your kitty at that time, and that is sad.
And we were also the number 1 ranked Asian team at that time in the sprint relay.
Still, you could not go.
Yeah, I still couldn't go.
That is really sad. I mean, I'm sure when you actually look at how the teams are going now, I'm sure you would be happy, because I think if you're qualified, then you go. There is no sanction, because the sports ministry is different. Because you had what? At that time, there is no sports ministry, right? It was under which department?
No, came much later. But like in 1970 Asian Games, they relaxed the rules. In fact, I actually came out of retirement. Okay. I came out of retirement because I hadn't participated in the Asian Games. I came out, and I first had to qualify to get into the camp, which I did.
Okay.
And then I qualified as part of the relay team. And that's it. We won a bronze medal at those games.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that Asian Games a little while later. Just wanted to ask you actually, when you were always training in Bangalore and under Coach Krishna. Then after some time you started doing very well. I'm sure you would have been invited for the national camps. How was the experience of your first national camps, and what were the changes you had to do, or you learned something new during those camps?
In fact, my first national camp was in Bangalore.
Okay.
And and the reason I was selected for that camp is not for 100 or 200. I was selected for 400 meters.
Okay.
And there again, I made the mistake of not using the starting blocks in the 100. I slipped and lost out of a chance of even qualifying for the semi-final. But I got and this gentleman, Mr. Chikpapa, he insisted that I run 400 meters also. So I ran all 3. And I qualified for the final. In fact, I beat a person by Amrit Singh. He had just returned from Germany with the Indian. They sent a contingent to West Germany. At that time, it was West Germany, and I beat this guy Amrit Singh. He was probably ranked 3 or 4 in India at that time, and he was number 1 in the US. So he had gone on this tour to Germany. I beat him, and I qualified for the final. And Milka was also there in that final. So I had no idea how to run a 400 actually.
Okay.
To be very frank. And we had people like Daljit. Daljit Singh was 800 meter run, but he ran 400 also. There was Makan Singh who switched to 400 from 100 to 200. He moved to 200, 400. And Milka was there. Alex Silvera, he was also there.
Oh, wonderful.
So, yeah, I qualified for the final by beating this Amri. I finished second in my heat, and I ran 49.9. That's the first time I broke the 50 second. I ran in like 58 minutes, and I had the record at 50.2. But that's the first time I came under 50. I broke the 50-second barrier. Okay. And in the final, I just set the pace. I just said, okay, just run all out and see how it goes. And the pace was a bit too hot for Milka.
Okay.
He pulled out at the 300-meter mark. He pulled out of the race.
Okay.
And the race was won by Daljit Singh, surprisingly, because he's basically 800-meter runner. He was the 800-meter champion, in fact, national champion, and he won the 400 meters. And Makan finished second, and I was 5th.
Okay.
And that's how I got into, because 6 runners for the sprint relay, 6 runners for the 4x400 relay were invited for the camp. So we were under a coach called Jos Culbreath.
Okay.
He is an American, African American. but fair complexion. And he was a bronze medal winner in the 1956 Melbourne Olympics in the 400-meter hurdles. In fact, the Americans made a clean sweep. 100 in the 400 hurdles, they got 1, 2, and 3, and he finished third. So he's the chief coach in that camp, and I got to know a lot in that camp, training under Joe Scarborough. And we stayed. There was those days no facilities in the stadium. There was no water, and so they put us up at the Central College Pavilion. That's where we stayed, and we had to walk from the Central College, go through Coven Park to come to the stadium. That was the routine every day.
I'm sure traffic would have been not as bad as it is now in Bangalore.
That's why we just had to go through the park, go from the Central College Pavilion. That's where we stayed to the Kantirava Stadium. And Joe Scarborough initially, it was a very long camp, 7 weeks camp. They've never had a camp that long. And initially, the emphasis was on speed endurance. So he'd make us run on certain days 20, 100 meters, 10 on the curve, 10 on the straight. And as we were approaching the trials, he went in for more speed work and made us run distances that we had never run before, sprinters had never run before. Started off with a 600 meter. First time I ran first time I ever ran a 600 meter in training. I ran a 127, and it was the fourth fastest among the sprint group, including the 400 meter. Milka had a 121.8. I ran a 127. So, and then we had a 5-minute break, and then followed up with a 300 meters, running about at a speed of around 34 seconds. And then on the other days, we would run a 500 meters. That was a distance also we never ran. Milka ran a 61.500. I ran a 62.8. And that again followed by a 300 meters in 33 seconds.
So how many hours was this training usually? A morning and evening both?
No, morning. Actually, we sprinters never trained. During my time, it was only one session of training. That's all. Even in training camps, you maybe just go for a jog or something in Coven Park, do some exercise, and that's all. But no workout as such. So even my regular training was just one session, and that was, as I said, in the evening at this Anasami school. From 4 to 5:30. That was my training. That's a 1 hour's training actually.
And how many days a week?
5 days a week. I never trained on the weekends.
So how did you manage to replenish your energy? Because the training was very hard. You were actually, you have never done anything like this before. National camp, 7 weeks. How did you replenish your energy?
Well, see, we are Anglo-Indians. We are basically beef eaters. We eat a lot of beef. And then I used to eat a lot. See, in my father's house, the mining house in KGF, we had about 200 banana trees. So I used to eat 3 dozen bananas a day.
Wow, 3 dozen. That's amazing.
That gave me all the strength I think I needed. And that's a 3 dozen after each meal.
I mean, this is like a record in itself. Was it the small one or the big ones?
It's the size of it's the size of a rastali. You know this rastali size? It's about that size. Yeah, it's fairly big. Yeah. But 3 dozen, it's quite a lot.
Amazing. Well, it looks like the harvest was only for you. So,
well, we used to get a bunch. We'll have about 200 on a bunch, and we had, I said, 200 banana trees. So my mom used to grow away bananas. My other siblings, they would have just 2 or 3, and that's it.
Okay, fine. Anything? I mean, now you're in Bangalore, so the banana trees would not have been there at that time. Or you used to get stock from Kolar to Bangalore, bananas?
No. I stopped eating that many bananas after that. I came to Bangalore. I used to eat. In fact, I used to have bananas. In fact, you'll be surprised. My breakfast, I used to have breakfast at about 4 o'clock. I stayed with my cousin on Coles Road, Frasertown. And my daily routine was breakfast, at 4 o'clock in the morning, fried bananas and chapatis. And I
Okay.
had the same for lunch as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
It's
That's
only
nice.
at night. At night I had rice and curry or whatever.
Okay. So after training under the coach, I mean, you also won your first international medal. Just tell us a bit about your international medal, because just tell us about when was the first time you went out of India and your first international medal.
Well, my first actual international was in India itself. It was at New Delhi. We had after the Asian Games, which was dropped, we had a West German team that toured India. It was the same team that participated in the European Championships. Immediately after the European Championships, they toured India, and we had a series of 7 meets. Started off at Delhi, and I ran a 10.6 and 21.6, equaling national record in the 100 and national
Okay.
Asian record in both the 100 and the 200.
Okay.
And I got a bronze medal in that. The German team had 4 world-class sprinters. There was Alfred Heboff. He was the European champion, Alfred Heboff, and they had Peter Gamp. They were all 10.2, 10.3 runners. And there was another guy called Manfred Germer. I actually lost him in a photo finish in the 6th meet of the tour at Hyderabad. We both clocked 10.6, and he was a finalist at the 56 Melbourne Olympic Games.
Okay.
5th in the final, Manfred Germer. So they had 4 world class. There was another guy, Willie Holdup. He was a decathlon man. He used to run the 100 something. He was a pretty good 100-meter runner. He was running around 10.4, 10.5. But I beat him. He ran one of the competitions. I beat him.
Okay.
You'd be surprised some of these decathletes, especially in the 100 meters. There was a guy called Bruce Jenner, won in Mexico, and he's changed his sex now. No, Bruce Jenner.
Yeah.
He's 68.
Kendall Jenner.
Yeah, 68. He ran a 10.3 in the decathlon 100 meters. 10.3. And he ran a 45.5 or something in the 400 meters.
Okay. I mean, we have our own Gurbhajan Singh Randhawa sir, who also,
Yeah, he started off as decathlete.
but
And
110-meter hurdles.
Yeah, later he started doing just high jump, and then he moved to hurdles. In fact, you'll be surprised, in Tokyo 1964, he qualified as one of the fastest losers into the semi-final. In the semi-final, he beat this guy called Hayes. He was the eventual winner, in fact. He beat Hayes in the semi-final and finished second. He qualified for the final, and in the final, he finished 5th.
Yeah.
It was an amazing guy. Then first, he ran a 14 flat at that time.
It stood for many years, actually, because that was the record.
Yeah.
I think around 30 odd years, I think it stood before
Yeah.
it was broken. Your participation in 1964 Olympics is also, I heard a lot of stories about running in ankle deep water. Just tell us about that, the race which you ran, and how did you manage to run in ankle deep water?
Well, when the games opened on the 10th of October, the opening ceremony that was, the weather was really fine. When the athletics program started on the 14th, when we got up early in the morning, it was raining. And my event was at 10 o'clock. We got to the stadium, it was still raining. The track was wet. They had to keep sweeping the water off the track. But I was in the very first heat. And the person who won that heat was the Japanese guy, Hijima. He was given a rank number 1, surprisingly, because he was the first man at that time to run 10 flat that year in 1964. So he was ranked 1, ahead of even Bob Hayes. So he won the first heat, and as I said, we ran in ankle deep water. And I beat a guy called Jean-Paul Ravel-Menestosia of Madagascar. He was ranked number 8 in the world that year. And another guy from Poland, Sika, who was ranked number 10. So I beat both these guys in my first round.
Okay.
And my timing prior to the games, we had to send our list of timings at the various national international competitions to the International Olympic Committee. and they did the seeding accordingly. So my ranking was around 60 out of the 80 sprinters. At the end of the first round, I was down to number 35.
Okay. So that was
unfortunately, ours was the fastest heat actually of the first round. Hijima's 10.3 was the fastest. There were other guys with 10.8. I ran a 10.7. 10.8, who also qualified for the quarterfinals.
So the rains affected all of you, and I mean, how did you manage? Because you were wearing shoes, it would have definitely got water inside the shoes, but still you managed to run it.
Yeah, see, that was those days it was just cinder track. The synthetic track came only in '68 Olympic Games in Mexico City. So up till '64 it was just a cinder track. Water didn't really get into the shoes, but it'll be a bit soggy. That's all. The soles will be a bit soggy. Yeah. But you had to use the longer nails. So you had the privilege of you changing your nails.
Okay.
So you used to use a little longer nails to run on a softer surface.
Okay. So I mean, you were talking about the experience about Asian Games where you got dropped. The same with Olympics also. 1968, you could have also gone.
Yeah.
How did you keep yourself so motivated to run again and maybe come out of and also coming out of retirement to participate in 1970 Asian Games?
Well, as I said, 68 Olympic Games, the sprint relay team qualified. But unfortunately, two athletes, one had a hamstring injury, the other had jaundice. Okay. So they couldn't compete. So we had to try out two other youngsters, and we didn't attain the qualifying standard. So we couldn't make it to the Mexico Games. But with the team that had these two athletes who had jaundice and a person who had a hamstring injury, we had qualified. We had actually attained the qualifying standard.
Okay.
But since they were injured and ill, we couldn't use them. And they were not prepared to accept that time, the qualifying time that we did.
Okay. But what were you telling yourself to keep yourself motivated? It's like 12 years of not being able to do things. And how did you keep yourself motivated?
I just had the willpower to keep going. And it suddenly dawned on me, not even immediately, after 68, I stopped in 68. After the trials for the Mexico Games, I stopped completely. And suddenly it dawned on me that I hadn't participated in Asian Games. I need to at least go for these games, at least participate, even if I don't get a medal. And it looked as though we might not go because there was a boycott by the athletes. One of the athletes, he was a decathlete, P.S. Chauhan by name. You know Chauhan? And for some reason, they dropped him from the team. They said some disciplinary action. So the captain, Joginder Singh, he was the shot putter, and he said, if Sean is not going to be there, we are not participating. So I thought, okay, that's my end. That's the end of my chance of even participating in Asian Games. But I think better sense prevailed, and finally everything was sorted out, and we went to the games and got this bronze medal.
How was it finally getting
to win a medal, to be on the victory stand, to see the country flag going up.
Okay. So, who were your teammates at that time? You were there. Who were your other teammates?
Walt Thomas ran the first leg.
Yeah.
Ramesh Taude, the straight, second leg. I ran the curve. And A.P. Ramaswamy, he also hailed from Bangalore. He's no more. He died in an accident in '78. He was in a training camp and he died. He fell off the terrace, actually.
Yeah.
And he was the final leg runner.
Okay. How was he? Because he was an upcoming star of sprinting at that time. How was he as a runner?
He was already an established star, actually. This was '78. It was the end of his career. That probably was the last time he was going to participate. In fact, his international career was over around '73, '74 itself. He was as soon as I retired in '68, he took over as the champion in '69. Immediately after that, and actually he started his career as a triple jumper. He used to triple jump. It's only on the advice of another athlete. I don't know if you know Sridhar Alva. Used to be a high jumper, long jumper. In fact, he was a national champion in long jump. Sridhar Alva, and
Okay.
he advised AP Ramasamy, because he had the speed, to switch to 100 meters, and that's what he did. And he went on to become a national champion and an international athlete as well.
Amazing. Sad, we lost him quite early.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah. Just one of the things was that you were actually training on, in a cinder track. How was the feeling when you first ran in a synthetic track? That's a question Gnanasekar and Ramaswamy sir is asking you. How was your feeling? And I mean, it was in the Olympics, I think you ran in a synthetic track, or when was it? And how was the
No,
feeling?
never. I never had the opportunity to run on a synthetic track except in the veterans category. My first ever run on a synthetic track was the age of
Okay.
41 in
Okay.
the Asian veterans meet in Singapore,
Okay.
and that's when I got a silver. That's the first time,
Okay.
and I ran. My timing was 0.2 seconds faster than what I achieved in India. That was the
Oh, wow.
advantage of being on a synthetic track.
Okay.
And the next time, and the only other time that I ran on a synthetic track, was the World Veterans Games in Melbourne, 1987. I got to the final, and I finished eighth in the final.
Okay.
And the winning time was a fantastic 11 seconds in that age cat, 45 to 49. And
Wow.
the age category of 40 to 44, the winning time was 10.7.
Okay. It's amazing.
And
Amazing. Even at that time, you ran, under 12 seconds.
yeah, I ran 11.6.
So were you practicing before that, or I mean, it's just like few months
Not,
before the
not,
games?
yeah, maybe about 2 or 3 months before the veterans meet, I would just do a little bit of a workout, not too strenuous actually.
Okay. So now let's talk about one story which everybody is eager to hear this, because a lot of pictures of you and Milka Singh sir, so together, a lot of captions. Just tell us about your not rivalry, I would say, but in many ways your competition with him, and how was he as a runner? You also were training together. What was his mentality which made him maybe different than many of the other sprinters during that time?
Well, he was mentally a very tough guy, because when he was actually he was born in Pakistan. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
And he moved to India during partition, and he saw several of his kith and kin being murdered. He saw that happen. And he landed up on New Delhi station, where he slept for a couple of days. Then he got himself enrolled in the services. He joined the services, and someone told him, if you participate in sport, you will get time off, plenty of time off. So that's what he did. He went enrolled in service. He joined the services and started training for athletics.
Okay.
And I believe this. I don't know how far that is true. In all the southern, because he was based in the south, in Pune. So
Hyderabad. He also
no,
stayed in Hyderabad for some.
Pune, Southern Command, and I believe he used to gamble all night with some of his teammates in the services, gamble all night till 6 in the morning, go and have a quick shower, and then go in for competition. This is what he did. This is what we heard. I don't know how far that's true.
Okay.
But he worked really hard to get to where he was. And in fact, he was the first Indian to win a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in the 1958 Games in Cardiff. At that time, as I said, they followed the imperial system. Even the Commonwealth Games, it was the imperial system. It was all in yards. Milka won the 440 yards in a new Commonwealth Games record. It's only from 1962, from the Perth Commonwealth Games, that they switched over to the metric system.
Okay. And you have watched him closely while training also, because you trained together. How was he as a trainee also? I mean, was there anything he used to do differently than others?
Not much. Because during that camp, 62, he was not at his prime. He was still very good, there's no doubt. But so he never used to do the type of workout that he was used to doing. He used to, I believe, do when he was doing 300 repetitions, he used to do about 8 repetitions at a pretty fast pace. And I believe after his training, his workout was so tough and strenuous, he would even vomit blood, I believe. These are the stories that we heard.
Okay. Um, so that's because and the press also made a big deal out of it, right? Between you and him, a lot of
Yeah,
crazy headlines at that time.
yeah. I don't know whether I should talk about it
No, I mean
because
you can tell the headlines. So
yeah, I can say the headline. Yeah.
because the
See,
press
this
can be nasty, but the headlines were. I mean, I find they were funny actually.
because after the Asian Games, he won 2 goals at the 62 Asian Games in Jakarta,
Yeah.
and 3 months after those games, we had the first time they introduced 3 national meets in here in '63. Interstate national, where you represent your state where you're residing, or you can opt for the state where you're born. Uh, the second was the open national, where you had the services, police, railways, uh, post and telegraph, and universities. And later on, steel plant, sports sport, and heavy engineering joined them. Coal India. So that was the open national. And the third was the national zonal championships. So Milka came to this was in Allahabad, the interstate national champions at Allahabad in 1963. And, that one person in that 4x4 team that won the gold medal in the Jakarta Asian Games was not a national champion. His name was Jagadish Singh. So, in order to give him a chance to become a national champion, Milka pulled out of the 400 meters. His entry was there, but he pulled out. He didn't run the 400. And Daljit and Makan, the 2 other members of the team that won the gold, they were not in training because of the Indo-China war. They were not in training, so they didn't come for the interstate championships at Allahabad. And then Milka had a look at the entries in the 200 meters. He said, nobody there to worry about. Decided he'll run the 200 meters. So in my first round, I ran at 21.7. It was just 1/10th of a second outside his Asian Games record. He ran at 22.6. He was not in the best of form. And the semi-final, I ran at 21.7 again. And he came to me and said, this is how he addressed me. Powellji, you're running very relaxed. Are you running all out? I said, Milka, you don't need to run all out in the first round of semi-final. I'm reserving that for the finals. And I think he was a little upset because in the semi-final he ran at 22.3. And then I think he finally realized, well, here, he was a chance of him being beaten. So on the day of the final, he came, we used to stay in tents in the Games Village. He came, I was being interviewed by the press at that time. He came in and all suited and booted. And he said, Powellji, I'm not running the 200 meters final. He says, I want to give you youngsters a chance. So the press said, if you're really genuinely interested in giving youngsters a chance, you would not have participated in the first place. Because by participating and then withdrawing, you deprive some youngster being in the final. And then we had this, after the 200 semi-final, the local paper headlines were, Powell real threat to Milka.
Okay.
And then when he pulled out of the final, that's the local paper is called The Leader. And then on the next day when he pulled out, the headlines from this newspaper, The Leader, said, Milka flees final.
Okay.
And then we had this write-up from Aussie Manual from the Free Press Journal. And the headlines he gave was, the flying Sikh is now the shirking Sikh.
Okay.
And another caption was, Kenneth Powell is the fastest man in India, but in the athletes' village at Allahabad, he was better known as the man who gave Milka Singh the jitters.
Oh God.
So,
Okay.
yeah, these were the little captions that were there for when he pulled out to the final.
Okay. The press can be real nasty sometimes.
That's right, they can be. And then before he left Allahabad, he made a vow with the press people. He said a month later was to be the Open National at New Delhi Railway Stadium. And the railways were hosting that Open National. And he said he would go to those national open national. He'll run both the 200 and the 400, and he will win both. But when he came to Delhi, he didn't run the 200 at all, and he only ran he won the 400, but he didn't run 200, didn't venture to run the 200 at all, not in the first round.
Okay.
And that's how, and we didn't get to meet. Actually, then the third national meet, that's the national zonal meet, was at Ajmer. It was later in the year, and it was in December. And I was not there. I was in Kenya. I'd gone for this
East India meet.
Yeah, there was it was an international meet. They were celebrating the independence, East Africa, Nairobi, and there was an invitation for just one athlete from India. There were just a few athletes from various countries. Now, Great Britain had the biggest contingent of seven members. So the invitation for India was just one, and the federation selected me. So I went there, and on the day of the day I arrived, there was a competition going on. It was the East African University meet. I was not scheduled to run in that meet, but you see, the association, Kenya Athletic Association, was run by all Britishers at that time. There was one Indian, Joginder Singh. He was a joint secretary of the Kenya Athletic Federation. All the rest were Britishers. There was a guy who was a secretary. His name was Maurice Muir. He was a Scotsman.
Okay.
And he came and dropped me off at the hotel, and he introduced me to another guy from Finland. He was the only athlete from Finland. In fact, we still keep in touch. Are Asiala, his name is. Okay. He was a triple jumper, but he couldn't compete in that meet because his baggage hadn't arrived.
Okay.
So this Maurice Muir, I just had a heavy lunch. I was still in my ceremonial outfit. That's how we traveled, and he came to me and says, there's a competition going on. There are a few open events. This is the East African University meet, and there are a few open events. You like to participate? I said, okay, get a feeling of the track at least. So I went there. By the time I got to the stadium, they were all lined up for the 100 meters.
Okay.
Yeah, they were all lined up. So, and it was a state final. So I had to get out of my ceremonial outfit, put on my tracksuit. It took a while. It took about 10 minutes. They held up the race for 10 minutes. I didn't even warm up. I just went straight into the competition. I finished second. I got beaten by the Kenyan number 2, John Owiti.
Okay.
And half an hour later was the 220 yards. And by that time, I was fully warmed up. And I beat this guy, the same guy, John Owiti, by about 5 yards.
Wow.
He was number 2. And the number 1 from Kenya was a guy of Indian origin, Serafino. And in fact, he was the reigning Commonwealth Games champion. He won the gold in both 100 and 200 at the Perth Commonwealth Games. Okay. His name was Serafino Anto. In fact, when he came to holiday to Goa, he came and visited me in Bangalore. He came to my house. I was staying with my in-laws at that time. Yeah.
Okay.
And,
so I mean, without warm-up, you went and you came second. That is amazing.
Yeah.
How do you, if you reflect on it, how did you manage to do that? Because it's,
really don't, because I took a big risk actually without warming up. I could have had an injury actually, a muscle injury, a hamstring injury, but I just took a risk. I said, just wanted to compete, get the feeling of the track, and that's what I did. Fortunately, nothing happened. And 3 days later was the international meet, and I finished second, and I got a medal. I don't know if you can see it over here. It's a sprint. It was the one in Kenya.
Okay.
And I got a silver medal. Serafino Anto won the gold. Okay. And I finished second. In fact, I beat Ron Jones. He was the reigning British and European champion that year. He won in the European Championships in September, and this was December. I beat him in the Kenya International. And there was another guy, Omola from Uganda. He was a bronze medal winner in the Commonwealth 62 Commonwealth Games, and I beat him as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. So that was like that was the games where you got this two medals, right?
I got 3, in fact. I finished third in the 200 actually. Okay. And we had this relay. We decided, we had a mixed team, international team. In fact, this guy, this triple jumper, Asiala, he was part of that team. We formed a team, and we ran a relay, and we finished second. We got a silver medal in that.
So you have been, you've seen from 1960s onwards. the training techniques. How has it changed actually as compared to those times? How are the things changed now when it comes to training for sprinting?
Well, now the emphasis is mainly on power. See, during my time, we did not do any weight training as such.
Okay.
Now you see most of the athletes, all athletes, in fact, they do weight training. They do pretty heavy weights actually. So they build up their muscles and they build up their power. That's really, in fact, if you saw Bob Hayes, who won the gold in the Tokyo Olympic Games, he looked more like a bodybuilder. He weighed almost 200 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a massive guy.
Okay. Why we never used to do that at that time? I mean, despite having American coaches come to us,
But
was it not advised by them to do it?
even they didn't have those facilities. They didn't think of all that during that time. In the 50s and 60s, even the American athletes who participated then didn't do any weight training. It all came much later.
Okay. Apart from that, muscle building, anything else has changed as compared to your times when it comes to sprinting?
Nothing really has changed. Only thing, maybe your mental approach is different to what it used to be. See,
Okay.
when we traveled, it was very tiring actually. We traveled by train. We traveled third class, unreserved. We carried our own bedding. We had we carried that's what is called a hold on. We put everything into that and carry the all they gave us in the camps were just a cot, and you had to bring your own bedding, and it was like dormitory type of accommodation. You had 15 to 20 people in a room. In Patiala, they were massive rooms where the harems used to be.
Yes,
And
quite
so that's
quite famous
also,
there.
sorry.
Quite famous harems. Yeah.
So
So, I mean, there is a story about Indian food becoming famous in Tokyo Olympics. Uh, just tell us about what was the favorite food of all the athletes who used to come and eat Indian food from our side.
yeah, the general rule was the Indian contingent took their own cooks. They did that for the 64 games in Tokyo, and we had a lot of Anglo Indians from the Australian hockey team. There were five of them, in fact. There were three brothers in that team. They were born in Jabalpur, the famous Pierce brothers, Eric, Gordon, and Julian. Three of them were in that team. In fact, a total of five of them played for Australia at some time or other.
Okay.
And then we had two guys who hailed from Bangalore. One guy he came from Bensontown. One guy was Don Smart, and the other guy was Tony Waters. So they used to invariably come and have Indian food, which was like
Okay.
mostly chicken curry or mutton curry.
Okay. So nice. Barbara Powell is saying your memory of names is legendary and dates also. So
Yeah,
it's
thank God
amazing
I
how
was
you
able to
remember all
remember.
this.
Mhm.
Good. So Jnanashekaran Ramaswamy sir was the last male athlete from India to win, medal in 100 meters and
Yeah,
gold in 200 meters, in
that's right.
Asian Games.
Yeah, yeah.
Despite such good training and despite so many advancement in training and so many facilities being provided, what do you think is the reasons why we have still not been able to produce excellent sprinters, even at least for Asian Games range?
Yeah, and I think that mental, they're lacking in mental toughness mainly. And the reason I feel athletes just aim at reaching the qualifying standard. Once they attain the qualifying standard, they just relax and they don't worry about, winning medals at the games. I remember in 1960, that was my first national. I got to the semi-final in the 100 meters. And in fact, Milka won all three races. Not many people know that. He won 100, 200, and 400 in the Delhi National in 1960.
Okay.
In fact, yeah, in the final, he had a wind assisted 10.4, but semi-final, he had 10.6. So he's part of there were five people who held the record at that time, 10.6. I was one of them. Milka was another. There was Nikki Ferro, Rajasekharan. We all ran 10.6. And Milka ran a 10-4, wind assisted, and we had a guy called Joshi who finished second. Makan was third, Joshi was second, and Joshi was selected for the Rome Olympics. So he was selected, and I suppose, okay, you know that chance of advancing even to the next round. So they probably don't even run all out. And when you only realize when the timing is taken, he ran 11.3. He ran a 10.7 in India. He ran 11.3 in Rome, and you'll be surprised that the women, that's Wilma Rudolph, she won the gold in 11 flat. So that's how it is. You see, they relax after they qualify, and that's it. In fact, talking about the 1970 Asian Games, 2 games I missed out, lack of funds, that's what they said. And although my company, first ITA and then Tata Steel, they said they paid the entire cost.
Okay.
And but they didn't agree.
Okay.
They said they don't want to start a precedence. And I can't say how they can say that, because anyhow they are taking 60% of the costs. 60% goes towards the airfare. 40% is towards the accommodation and food. So if you can take 40%, surely you can take the 60% as well. Or you take 60%, you can take the balance 40%. But they didn't do that. And that's how we lost it. In fact, when I was in ITA in 62 Asian Games, 3 from ITA qualified. I was there for athletics. We had Ashwat Iyer for volleyball, and Christie, the hockey goalkeeper, number 2 the reserve goalkeeper. Now you need when you go for games, Asian Games, you need 2 goalkeepers, definitely. If anything happens, what do you do? Anything happens to the number 1 keeper, what do you do? Lakshman was the number 1 keeper. And Christie was even given his kit. And just before the team left, they dropped him and replaced him with a cook. Can you imagine doing such a thing? In fact, he even got his medal when the team returned after the Asian, because his entry had already been sent. He got his medal without even going to the games.
Okay.
So that's how ridiculous it was. In fact, I remember when we qualified in '66. It happened at Patiala in the camp, and they said they're going to sort things out. Maybe they'll consider our case. I said that I told the rest of my teammates in the sprint relay, this is not going to happen. I'm leaving. I'm going back home, I said. And that's what I did. And it never happened. It never happened.
Okay. So there's some comments going on in Facebook about your memory, and your brother-in-law is saying that eating all those bananas has given you great memory, it seems.
I got a computer brain. It's all stored up there.
So it's been more than 1 hour we have been speaking, and so many wonderful memories, so many great stories to hear from you. So I'll come to my last question also now. Your final advice to anyone? Yes, you want to say something?
Yeah, just before I do that, I just want to talk about the opening ceremony at the '64 Olympic Games. The welcome address by Mr. Avery Brundage, who is then the president of the Olympic Committee. This is what he said, very briefly, not his whole speech, but I can remember the important things. And this is what he said. We welcome the youth of the world to participate in the 18th edition of the Tokyo Olympic Games. You are the finest athletes from your countries. Not every one of you can win an Olympic medal, to win an Olympic gold medal. Not many of you can even win a medal. But the very fact that you are here, assembled here to participate in these games, is in itself a victory. And that's how he ended his speech.
Wonderful. That's nice. So a few congratulatory messages coming in. John Tyagarajan was saying, extremely proud of you representing India, sir. So we had Vinay Satyal is also tuning in, and he's also listening to you. So we got a few more people also who has come. So I would just come to my last question. is that
Yeah.
your final advice to athletes who want to become another Kenneth Powell?
Okay, the first thing I like to say is, many of our youngsters of today, they like to copy their heroes. I guess there's really nothing wrong with that. But they got to remember that each one of them is unique. And it's very important to be yourself instead of trying to be a carbon copy of somebody else. Because in trying to be somebody else, you probably end up not even being yourself. They say practice makes perfect. But I like to say that practice does not make perfect, but proper practice does. So it needs to practice in a proper way. And the best things in life don't come easily, except through a great deal of hard work and sacrifice. So my advice to aspiring youngsters who are watching this show is to practice hard and often. For proper practice leads to success, and success leads to greater joy and personal satisfaction. With that, I'd like to say a big thank you for inviting me to be on this show. Thank you so much, Rajesh.
Thank you very much, sir. Please be online in the
Yeah,
studio. I just thank my audience,
yeah.
and I just want to thank every one of them for coming in, making the time, and yes, all your relatives out there who are watching from USA, UK, and we have got from Australia. Thank you very much,
Okay.
and also, of course, not forgetting everybody from India also, we are tuned in. We got people who don't know you but want to hear about you, who have also tuned in. A few of your
Okay.
colleagues, who have come in. I want to thank all of them. It's been a pleasure. You be in the studio, sir. I'll just talk to you in a minute, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.